All right, everyone. Welcome to the Cloud Posse DevOps office hours. It's April 13th, 2022. My name's Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, which just means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with their teams and showing them the ropes. So if that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format's very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered today. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time when you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by heading over to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. Just enter in your email and you'll get an invitation to join our weekly sessions. We host these calls every week. Our call today is recorded. We'll automatically post a recording of the session to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy the content and want to support it, it really helps us out a great deal if you hit those like and subscribe buttons. Just head over to youtube.com/cloudposse and subscribe. That's youtube.com/cloudposse. So with that said, oh my God, do we got a lot of announcements today? Where do we begin? Well, we'll start at the top here. So the first one is pretty exciting. It's almost surprising that it didn't start off this way, that Lambdas didn't always work this way. But yeah, to run a Lambda historically, you had to build your Lambda artifacts and you had to upload them to S3. You had to deploy your Lambda function, pointing it at the S3 object. You had to deploy your API gateway. You had to point your API gateway at the Lambda, and then also get all that IAM stuff correct. Well, a lot of that is still true. There's been some improvements now. You can have Dockerized Lambdas, which is nice, so that you can use the same build and deploy container process that you use for other services. But the latest thing is now you can actually deploy Lambda functions. For example, if you just have really small microservices that are publicly accessible, maybe you're fronting them with Cloudflare or CloudFront, you can now expose those services without an API gateway over HTTPS. So it just reduces one more layer of infrastructure that you need to deploy, that API gateway. So I'm excited about that. And a great use case for this is having your little chat bots and webhook endpoints deployed as Lambdas, so they cost very little and can receive public traffic, and you don't need to stand up the kitchen sink of scaffolding. Okay, anything to add to that before we move on?
I was just wondering if anyone has used this feature already, because it is quite new, and I didn't read it, and but I want to use it, and but I don't know about some possible limitations or whatever. If someone has any experience,
yeah, and like, is it supported by Terraform already? And I don't know the answer to that. Matt Calhoun, have you looked into that already to see if it's already supported?
I didn't look whether it was supported with Terraform, but I actually launched it via the console just to play around with it, and it seems to work pretty well. The only thing that I would say is that if you need anything other than the absolute basic like use case of like send an event directly to your hook, like with cores, like that's it. Like if you want anything else, it's not supported yet. So you then need to back off to like an HTTP gateway or a full-blown API gateway, depending on what you need. But like custom authorizers or reroute, like URL rewriting policies, or
X-ray, custom ACM certs.
I didn't see that. I think that the only
it doesn't support custom domains at all.
Yeah,
it's only
no
custom domains.
Yeah, it's only on an Amazon domain. That's what I was about to say. I don't even think you can use your own
so
domain.
it's totally intended just to be the endpoint of like internal a webhook receiver, an internal service or something sitting behind a CDN or something.
Yeah. So
when I did kind of have a question and kind of never got around to looking into it. Maybe you guys know offhand, when deploying something like a container into a serverless function like Lambda, how would persistence work? Essentially, is that even achievable, like a volume?
It's not the
Only-
primary
yeah.
use case, but it's been addressed. Yeah, you can
Okay.
use EFS mounts. You can follow 12-factor principles and use S3 as a backend, databases,
Yeah,
so
if-
forth. Matt, what were you gonna say?
I was going to say that you can, if you need it for like processing space, because you need to do a lot of that. I think I saw an announcement not that long ago that the actual volume for Lambda can be significantly larger now, but
10
I
gigs
don't
or
remember
something.
the exact number on that. But yeah,
It's
for
10
as far as 10 gigs now, yeah.
Yep,
So
you pay for it. It's EBS. It's
Yeah.
there since the function starts, and the container is used until it dies, but then it goes away. It's basically a /temp.
yeah, that
That's
makes sense.
what
Scratch space.
It
Right,
does.
but-
That was kind of like my immediate concern is like, okay, well, how are they preventing people from essentially turning a container into like a VM?
Oh well,
The runtime's
I'll-
very short.
yeah, a Lambda
yeah,
can't
the
run.
Lambda runtime. It will cut out after a certain period of time. It can run for a while, but it will get kicked out.
15 minutes. It
15
can't. You
minutes.
can't execute for more than 15 minutes, or else it gets destroyed. And you can't really like you can't do a lot of things in there like that you would be like your memory limitations and your CPU limitations would probably like eventually make it not tenable to run as an actual like long living container. But
Yeah.
maybe
So
it
they're
would,
very,
you know.
yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Thanks. Clear some stuff up.
And
So
you
the-
also, sorry, you also have to inherit from their base container or have like certain endpoints. Like the entry point into a Lambda container is like well defined. You can't change that to just be like anything you want. So you actually have to have it listen for certain events and all that from the Lambda service itself. So anyway,
Thanks, Matt.
go ahead, Derek. Sorry.
No, that's good. Yeah, so it's a very restricted, opinionated way to do serverless functions managed by AWS. Actually, it's a perfect almost segue into something we're going to be talking about here at the very end of the announcements is scaling containers for AWS. This is an update from Vlad on the current state of containers in AWS, because as we all know, there's like 20 ways to do it in AWS. So what way is right for you? Anyway, I don't want to start that conversation just yet. That's gonna run a little bit longer. So let's get through some other announcements here.
Quick question from my side before we move on. Is there any way you can protect the execution or the invocation of this Lambda function? Because I'm a little bit concerned that if you expose this function to the public internet, you may start getting charged for every single invocation. So is there any way that you can protect, I don't know, the number of recurrent invocation or simultaneous invocations?
No.
Okay.
Luckily,
Yes.
Lambda.
Yes,
Well, no,
there
you-
are. You can do API gateway, you can do WAF, you
No,
can
no,
do
no, no,
Shield.
No.
With the
you can do-
endpoint.
With this
the
endpoint
Oh.
I'm referring to.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a little bit
yeah.
dangerous to me.
There's
I mean,
no
it's
way
like
to do it.
it's like you
Does
are
it-
opening
does it
a single
still-
endpoint to the internet and boom.
But it's no more dangerous than exposing any endpoint.
Sure, it
I'm talking
is.
about
to
from
public.
a cost to serve perspective, in the sense
Yeah,
that you're
so-
gonna be
Well, like
So-
ALBs don't
executions.
support security groups.
Sure they do.
No.
No.
Or ALB,
They support-
NLBs don't, I guess.
And
They
NLB
support
don't,
WAF though, Eric, and you can have
yeah,
WAF
exactly.
rules that prevent
And you can limit
DOS
that. Yeah,
attacks
exactly.
and,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
all of those things. So
So
yeah, not yet.
Yeah.
That's why I said
That's
anything
scary.
other than very basic, don't use this.
And I guess WAF would
crazy.
be an example of something that also doesn't work with these functions, would just be an assertion.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Vlad, were you holding your hand up or was that old?
Yeah, I want to agree with Matt, and Ben Kehoe also had a thread on this specific subject on Twitter. Like, Lambda HTTP endpoints should be rare. They shouldn't really be used. It's an anti-pirate because you're suddenly going to need some rate limiting. You're suddenly going to need some auth. You
Exactly.
should
Yeah.
take
Yeah,
the bite
okay.
and do API gateway or ALB or something that works better. Like this is an exciting launch because it's awesome for testing, for quick stuff, for
Yep.
cost optimization if you're doing things, but it's an out there service. It shouldn't be the common default that you're using.
Yeah, the only place I would disagree with you on that would be is if you want if for like literally for a webhook receiver. I see that as like the only real like legit thing. You need you need GitHub to send you a bunch of events and you want to do something with it in a Lambda, or like a Slack chat bot is going to like send you something, whatever. This seems like that would work pretty well for that because you generally don't need like all those other things. But for anything that you want with that needs real, like any sort of real like features on top of it, then you definitely need to move to either like an HTTP or REST gateway, like on the API gateway function for sure.
I think it's important to keep in mind and just kind of vocalize that, you know, Amazon, for better or worse, does a pretty good job at putting out MVPs and then iterating on them. So, you know, this will likely
True.
get better. It's,
Yeah.
you know,
yeah.
it's going to be the right use case for, it's going to be the right solution case and for some use cases, but not all of them, you know, and it'll iterate.
Yeah, although really, if they start iterating, they iterate themselves to an API gateway, HTTP, you know, an HTTP API on API gateway. Like this is, like they already have a product that does that. It's like, you know, so this is really specifically for those like small use cases to do those kind of things.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the next announcement, which, which is, yeah. So, you know, those AWS provider changes that we brought up a few weeks ago or a month ago at this point, basically totally broke many people's infrastructure relying on S3 buckets, most notably. Then they ended up backporting some of those changes to the 3.0 version of the API of the AWS provider and provided a path for migration. Well, now they just walked that back entirely altogether. And while it's still there, it is now not going to happen in V4. It might happen in V5 of the provider. So yeah, this is kind of like this is what it means now. If you want to do version pinning, to work with the backwards compatibility that they now introduced into 4.0. What this means for Cloud Posse modules as well, I guess we're still moving forward with the new API. They bought us some time with this, and if you use this pinning, you should be good without upgrading. But we'll be upgrading to support the latest resources for S3.
And just to make a point, that's meant that version pinning is meant for human consumption. Terraform doesn't support that format.
Okay, Jeremy, thank you. I didn't know that this OR was supported. So, oh, okay. So that is just this is pseudocode for version pinning.
The way we deployed it, we just explicitly deny, it accepts the comma. And so we explicitly deny 4.0, 4.1, 4.2, to 4.8.
Okay. Makes sense.
So question though, oh, I'm sorry, Jeremy.
Go ahead.
No, I was just, maybe I'm confused. So you're saying like these versions of the AWS provider that broke all the S3 stuff that we did, you know, like provider version 3, all that stuff is now allowed in the newer version of the provider. So
yeah,
what they did in version 4.9 is everything that they took out in version 4, they replaced and made optional. Restored and made optional. And everything they added is still available. And if you try to use them both at the same time, you will get problems. You'll get constant drifts and changes. But everything that worked in 3.68 still works in 4.9. and everything that worked in 4.0 still works in 4.9. And the deprecation warnings are even gone, I think.
Got it.
And they're going to do this all over again in 5.0.
Wow. Okay. No, that's really big, because I mean I've got so many branches all over the place with Terraform modules that had S3 stuff embedded in it that I couldn't use to go forward with newer versions of the AWS provider. So this is kind of a workaround for that, I guess. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the whole.
No, they
like,
basically not even a
and what's not.
workaround. This is giving you more time. There is a they realized that this was a huge problem because they got lots of people yelling about it, and that they broke everything without adequate advance warning, so they decided essentially to roll back and make this release of 4.0 your advance warning, and actually do it in the 5.0 release whenever that comes.
Okay, yeah, I can work with that.
So
5.0 comes out tomorrow. I'm just kidding.
That's not funny. That's not funny, man.
As far as I haven't investigated it fully, but I did look at it for a couple of modules, and as far as I can tell, the 4.9 just basically restores the 3.x functionality without complaint.
Thanks, Jeremy, for informing on that. Okay, any other questions on Provider 4.0 before we move on? AWS Provider 4.0, 4.x. All right, so another announcement here. I think it's huge. I'm surprised I haven't heard more in my news feeds about it, but Amazon has just done something that has been in place for, I mean, over a decade, which is, inter-zone traffic is billable. But if you're using now a transit gateway, that is now free. So all traffic in or out of the VPC across, networks with or availability zones within the same region are free. You're still going to incur the transit costs if you exit the region and go to another region via your transit gateway or other, client VPN, but within a region, it's free. So this is part of our common pattern at Cloud Posse. We always deploy a transit gateway for purposes such as automation or transiting VPCs via AWS Client VPN. So I think this is a welcome thing for us. All right, next announcement. This was something, I don't think it's a new announcement, but I know when it first came out with GitHub profiles, I tried it on an organization and it didn't work. I like if you go to Cloud Posse or github.com/Osterman, we've talked about how if you're a solo developer or you want to put your best foot forward, this is a great way to showcase your kind of developer resume or relevant links here. So if you can always, and this shows up at the top of your profile. That is now possible as well. And if you go to like GitHub, github.com/GitHub, you can see an example of this. So you can put whatever content you want here. And I believe you stick it in a .profile or in your .github/profile directory, I think is where it goes. And I think this is interesting because one of the problems that we have at Cloud Posse is we have so many repositories, over 440 repositories, and the navigation using topics is weak. You can search for things here, but there's no way to easily group or organize what you want to showcase to visitors to your organization. So now with this, what we can do is we can create a profile page for the organization and kind of do a better job highlighting what we want to do, what we want to show about our GitHub organization. And that's something I think we'll be doing at Cloud Posse shortly.
Yeah, just to clarify there, there's a in the organization, you create a repo that's called .github, and then
Yeah.
you in that you have a folder called profile, and then you can basically, yeah, exactly, put a README in there, and that's where it comes up. Yep,
Yeah.
you got it.
Has anybody already been utilizing this functionality for their organization? All right.
I think the other, I think you can use that same repository for some other things, like
Community health files. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And there's even like, I think there's like a linter setting that you can put some sort of config in there so that it will do different things depending on you can set rules, I guess. Sorry.
Well, the one annoying thing though that I really wish you could do is have global workflows that if you add a workflow to this repo, it automatically applies to every other repo, but it doesn't work that way. But yeah, these are the supported files that you can stick in there that if you put these, then they apply to your entire organization, every repo in your organization. So if you want to check that out, I'll add the link here. Next announcement. So this is not a real case study, but it reads like a case study almost on what is ongoing, currently happening, is like the longest outage in history. No, but affecting a major corporation, in this case, Atlassian. And I am so grateful that we were not impacted by this. And I'd seen mutterings of this on Hacker News and Twitter, and I didn't really understand what was going on, but this write-up here is very clear on what's happened. And the gist of it is that if you ran one of these legacy plugins called the Insight plugin, which has been now deprecated, they created a script that they were going to run to kind of clean up the database for this. And some other insights were derived from this. So Atlassian's cloud products are running on what is presumably a single database cluster. Multiple products. So we're talking Confluence, Jira, and Opsgenie. So the customers who had this plugin installed are the same customers that have now been totally dead in the water for almost 2 weeks, and they expect some customers won't be restored for another 2 weeks. And basically, they had a script, they hadn't properly tested or validated, they hadn't put in checks to make sure that you're not deleting too much data, and it deleted all data for those tenants. So Atlassian has backups. They have, as part of SOC, they have to show and demonstrate that they can restore from backups and all of that stuff. And this is fine and dandy. This is great. But the problem is, and this goes for any company utilizing a single database backend, is you can't restore a single tenant very easily. So Atlassian hadn't developed any products to be able to recover individual tenants of their multi-tenant cloud platform. So they had to basically restore a snapshot and manually copy over the records that were deleted from that snapshot. Or they could have just restored from a snapshot and been back in hours, but everyone else, every other customer of their tens of thousands of customers would then be losing data. So this was the hard trade-off they did. But really, the biggest part about this case study is just what not to do as a company when you have a catastrophic situation like this. And it is hard. Nobody wants to experience these things, but basically customers were in the dark for over a week on what was going on. And they just, kept on saying, restoring your data, template messages and updates is our top priority. We continue to restore data. We continue to restore data. And they did this for weeks. Now, finally, they've come out and confirmed what everyone else was already basically piecing together, through just coincidences. Yeah.
Mind if I add some comment? This is very interesting. You know, I just started a new job about a month ago, but at my last place, I worked on SaaS migration for like 2 years. And it was in a regulatory, semi-governmental environment, and we had very stringent requirements for SaaS. I met with the Atlassian security engineering team about shortcomings on things like, you know, BYOK and other things. And, you know, basically was told we can't do it because we have a monolithic architecture, basically. So yes, I can confirm that to be the case. And if you look at, you mentioned their SOC documents, they actually, I will give them credit. They have some of the more thorough SOC documents that I've seen from a vendor. You can see architecture diagrams like in their documents. And they actually have the, not just the certification, but the questionnaires that they submitted, which a lot of places want you to like email their compliance team to get that level of detail.
So they're transparent on that.
And I'll also add that JFrog also uses shared database on their SaaS for Artifactory. And yeah, there are situations where you could be impacted on shared environment there on their
So
no, this go on, Matt.
I'm going to point out that this is clearly one of those cases where they did enough to tick the box for an auditor, but they did not do enough to operationalize what it really meant to restore. Because I guarantee that their RTO and their DR plan was not 4 weeks. You know, the one thing that I would say is that if you've got a product like this and you have to do all, you have responsibilities to third parties, particularly, you should be doing regular backups and restores and testing that you can actually recover to other places. And I know it sounds
which they
simple,
have been doing, and they said they have been doing. The key thing is being able to recover individual tenants in a multi-tenant.
exactly.
And that's not always, that's
come on, no one ever said what would happen if one tenant screwed up their data. How do we restore them? Like they came up with the case and they just said, let's not worry about
it. Another thing, sorry,
go on.
No, another issue I had with them was one of the requirements. So the key requirements that I was working with them on that they didn't have was like BYOK and data residency, right? And I had a requirement that all the data had to reside in US. They came to me about a year ago and said they had data residency, or even before that. And then I started digging into it, and you know, the plugin data was not data resident. They have this Forge thing now, but I was very disappointed with them. I had to do a lot of digging. I only found that out through working with some consulting companies that pointed that out to me, that, hey, these things are not actually data resident. So anyway, I ended up leaving. I went back and forth with Atlassian for 2 years and ended up leaving that company before I got anywhere with it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do about this. And apparently their compensation is only up to 50% for a serious outage like this. I think they should give I think any one of these 600 customers, they should just go full tilt. You get the next 6 months, you get the next year free or something insane like that. Because that would
the contracts they don't compensate you at the value of your time. Right.
It's just the license cost, the seat cost.
I think there's also a difference between what their contractual obligation is under an SLA and what they do to retain customers, right? So the 50% is only like that's what they're obligated to give you. That doesn't mean that that's what they will offer these customers, you know, for sure. so let's not trash them that bad.
Oh no. This is this was not meant in a disparaging way. I just think that they should do more. And the last thing, just to highlight, if you haven't been following this whole thing, what really eggs people on with this is that they've notified everyone using the Jira on-prem products that those are going away. So they're forcing people over to the cloud product, and then something like this happens. That really gives people the scares the EBGBs out of
Yeah.
Well, and especially if they don't have data segmentation and residency and encryption like nailed, like that seems ludicrous that they're going to lose every security conscious large enterprise that uses Jira.
They're still supporting data center, but if you know, it's a huge licensing cost. Like I had one that I took from server to data center. It was a small set of stuff, and it was like it went from like 15K to like 70K.
Oof.
So if you're doing it only because your product is going end of life and you don't actually need all the data center bells and whistles, then yeah, it's just a huge extra expense to stay on-prem, basically.
Hey, Andrew Roth, you were talking. You raised your hand. Did you want to add something?
So there's additional context as well as far as whether to go with Atlassian or not. I posted a link to this guy Nicholas Shalon, who was the former Air Force Chief Software Officer. He was the guy behind the Air Force's Iron Bank, which Atlassian Suite was in, and in it he talks about 1,200 plus vulnerable CVEs that they still haven't fixed. And the same stuff you guys have already mentioned, like they're pushing people to cloud where you won't even have visibility on what CVEs there are still once you're in a SaaS service. So it's some scary stuff.
Yeah, imagine if you were in the perfect storm here. You were one of the 400 plus affected Okta customers from the hack, and then you're one of the 400 Jira customers that were affected by this. And man, you'd feel like the end of the world is coming.
I'd like to see that Venn diagram.
You'd be buying hardware at that point.
That video's, a pretty decent watch. It talks, this guy, Nicholas Shalon, the guy on the bottom there has a lot of information about all that stuff. And he talks about it very publicly.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what channel was that in?
Oh, that was in the Zoom chat. Can you share it in the Slack, the office hour Slack, Andy?
Yeah.
And just in general, it's best if we put in the office hours. That way anyone can see it. All right, then
if only I was just going to say, it still blows my mind that all of the attempts that other people have made in this space, that Jira is still the best we can do.
It's frustrating to me. Yeah, I agree, and I'm equally frustrated by it. But everyone is not, they're not looking at Jira as a framework. They're looking at it as, hey, it just does agile, it does sprints, it does epics, does these things. And they're not implementing a generic build your own framework project management system. The closest would be like Airtable.
I think
and Atlassian
word to use, just to throw it in here, because I think it really is a case study on vendor lock-in, and just be careful. It's not saying that you can't do it, but be careful when you start treading that water of being locked into a certain vendor, certain solution.
I was looking at trying to maybe leverage one of these, all the SaaS platforms now have these Kanbans, at least for like development teams and stuff. But we had a lot of other operational and even business teams, and we were using the.
But they have the same. They can, nothing's saying that ClickUp and Clubhouse, which is now rebranded to something else. I forget what. I mean, they all probably have some of the same potential liabilities.
I mean, my totally comment that I would make is there's lots of other lighter, simpler tools. People talk about how Jira is the only game in town. Jira is the only game in town for the way Jira has decided to make you do agile.
Well, but it hasn't made us do it one way or another. It's very flexible.
I was going to say my problem at my last place, and I had one that I inherited that had been there for many years, was too flexible. There was not enough standardization. Jira. Basically, we had
yeah.
too many
Yeah,
workflows, too many custom
yeah.
fields.
It can be
They
that.
had-
It can totally be
It
that.
had been years of just Burger King, have it your way. And when I got it, it was very hard. I was actually hoping that I could clean that up when I went to SaaS, but it never happened.
So the next, the last announcement before we get into scaling containers on AWS was just something that hit my inbox before office hours, which was Microsoft or Azure just announced a new tool or a preview of a set of tools, one called Terrafy. Thought that was kind of funny play on words there, and the AzAPI. And basically they are Microsoft's response or complement to Terraformer. Terraformer is by Google, but obviously it works with AWS and it works with Google Cloud. And I think it works with Azure and it works with like 24 clouds or something, or a dozen clouds. But they have now the one that they maintain called Terrafy, which is a way of kind of taking now what was done with ClickOps and manually in your organization, codifying it in Terraform. You know, my condolences if you're in that situation that you have to do that, but let's get into it. Any last announcements, quick announcements before we move on to scaling containers on AWS? All right, so anybody who's been part of office hours now for the last couple of years will know Vlad, who is a regular contributor to our community and our office hours. He has been helping people kind of understand and navigate the container landscape on AWS. Let's see, where was that other post you did, Vlad, on?
No, that's it.
Oh, but oh, that was it. Yeah, you kind of showed like where's the diagram?
Oh, the yearly graph.
Tree. Yeah.
Go back to the other tab and search for yearly. It's also the chunkier ones. So this is what I did in 2020.
Oh,
and
okay.
in 2021, I got to present at reInvent, and now we're in 2022. Welcome to the fabulous year.
The evolution of this. So, Vlad, do you want to give just a background of maybe some context of, first of all, that, you know, describing the situation of how many ways there are to run containers, and then the purpose of what you're doing here, and some of that thought process, and yeah, take it from here.
Yeah. So this is a really long blog post. First of all, it's like a 45-minute read, and I don't want to take over this office hour to read it together. But what it does, it compares how fast you can scale containers from 0 to 3,500 containers. I initially started doing this, as Eric just shown, in 2020. I was considering moving some services to EKS on Fargate, and I wanted to know how it compared in scaling speed with EKS on EC2, which is what most of us do, Kubernetes with EC2 servers. So I ran the benchmark in 2020. The results weren't ideal. I posted it. It was fine. In 2021, I got a preview of what was about to be launched at reInvent, the speed improvements, and I had the reInvent talk where I presented how much stuff has improved. Now that we're in 2020, finally, in April, I wanted to publish this in January, but I couldn't do it. In April, I came out with a blog post and the updated results for this year. I'm saying this year, and I'm taking like a lot of freedoms. This is how containers scale right now. AWS is continuously coming out with improvements and things like that, but it's safe for the first half of the year. So, getting back to this blog post. So, scaling from 0 to 3,500 containers. I am not going into details and Prometheus metrics and push gateway and CloudWatch and AWS auto scaling, nothing. I'm just forcibly editing the number of desired containers to be 3,500 and seeing how fast it takes. That's it. Now I'm abstracting away a lot of complexity. Like, this is a 45-minute read. The first version of it was a little bit over an hour. We're glossing over a lot of complexity. So yeah, this is all detailed here, but Eric, if you can press space like 3, 4, 5 times, I don't know how much, or search for yearly. There's a graph which I really, really love, and it's why I've been telling all my customers, not this one is boring. This is EKS on EC2 using cluster autoscaler. Yeah, this is EKS on Fargate. So if you build a service using EKS on Fargate in 2020, without you having to change anything, not one single thing, your workload is now instead of taking 1 hour to scale, it's taking, what is it, about 9 minutes? 10 minutes without you having to do anything. That is absolutely ridiculous. And if you go down to ECS on Fargate is even faster. It's about 5 minutes. I cannot understate how much Fargate evolved and how much of a real option it became. Like initially it was expensive, slow, and boring. It got like 3 price reduction, it got spot support, now it also has Windows support, and it became so much faster. The graph that we were
interesting to see also if you had the mean time and the median time to launch a container would be helpful for me to understand.
Why are you asking that? Let me better understand the question first, because there are a lot of things that impact that.
No, that's true. Well, first of all, and these are assumptions that are totally fair to have been made. And what your point here is asserting like time to take 3,500 containers, very clear to understand. And if you don't have that problem, then yeah, I guess this is less interesting. But I think at the same time, this experiment is interesting for other people who want to do it, because one of the things that I found really annoying with Fargate overall on ECS or on EKS is it takes like minutes to launch the container, or at least 30, 40 plus seconds. But when on Kubernetes you launch it and it's up within like 1 second or 2 seconds.
It's up in 1 or 2 seconds if you have free space on the PC2 instances you're running, free space that you're paying for.
Right. Well, if you don't have to have a scaling event, right? But this is unfair as well, because you always, I mean, this is looking at the microscopic considerations of having excess capacity. Yes, you do have to have some excess capacity available or online, but then you also get you get the responsiveness of launching those containers. And if we're talking about launching containers at this scale, I mean, that's a nominal amount to pay for extra capacity to have the scale, the elasticity.
Did I hear you correctly saying that EKS now has Spot as well as Fargate?
No, it does not. It's only ECS on Fargate that has Spot support. No.
Okay, that's what I thought. I wanted to clarify what I heard.
No, I do go into this. Fargate is very different between ECS and EKS. For EKS, you get the default Fargate, which is Intel on demand, and that's it. Nothing else. That's it. For ECS on Fargate, you get some fancier storage options. You get R with Graviton 2. You get Spot. You get Windows. It's I don't want to say completely different product, but it is they have more options in the ECS world. AWS is playground. They can integrate stuff much faster, much easier.
They have full control over what it can do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is there an assumption that containers? Is there an assumption that you could fit 3,500 containers on the existing nodes that are up, or are you also taking into account that nodes have to scale up?
The nodes have to scale up, so all the scaling is happening from one node being already there. It's a node that's running like, I'm not scaling from 0 replicas, I'm scaling from 1 replica. I was lying. Sorry. So it's going from 1. So it's scaling to, I think, 14, because that's the free space on that node, and then adding the rest of the nodes. And
that is a fair consideration too, because you might very likely hit the ENI limitations before you hit the container limitations. And
are you also using the AWS CNI, or are you using the Calico or something else?
AWS CNI. I did not have the time or the willingness, to be honest, to test every single combination, because there are a lot of them. Just to give some more
from
context,
personal experience recently. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Isam.
I was saying from personal experience, very recently, I just switched over to Calico CNI, and I noticed for every node that gets spun up, there's like a 4 to 5 minute improvement time because AWS CNI took forever to actually get ready.
It takes a while. There are multiple APIs that are happening. You can tune them if you go and set options into the AWS VPC CNI daemon set, and they're documented on GitHub. But just to give some context, I work with a lot of SaaS companies that I try to get to high performing levels so they don't have the embarrassing accidents like Atlassian did, which I will not comment on. They're not clients. And I actually ran my first
Well,
test.
you're free to comment then, please.
I don't have enough details. It would be like me commenting on politics. Like, I'm not at all equipped.
No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
But yeah, so the initial test was ran because I was working with a SaaS company and they had to scale fast to actually do work for customers and then scale back down. It was very intense work, but it was spiky, it wasn't predictable, and we really wanted to optimize costs. So these tests are still kind of focused on my work because, well, I like money. But the data is still relevant. To go back and answer Eric's question, from what I've seen, Fargate is faster at starting containers now. That's because Fargate basically has free capacity. If I keep, I don't know, 30% capacity free on my EKS cluster, which is kind of a lot, but not gonna go there. That's 30%. It's I don't know how many 100 nodes. For Fargate, AWS has to keep warm capacity, and for AWS, 30% is like I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of servers or whatever. So they are able to provide much faster time at large scale. And
that makes
a container for EKS on Fargate takes about, I don't know what it was, a little bit over a minute on Fargate and a little bit over 2 minutes on EC2. Obviously, this will differ depending on what you have on the node, how long the node takes to spin up, how big your image is, if you're caching the image into the node AMI, and so on and so forth. Like, there are a lot of complexities there.
Of this experiment, like, do you have any estimate of how much did this experiment cost you?
A little bit over $7,000. The cost is shared at the end. I have some fun stats shared. So this.
Oh, you do? Interesting. That's a good.
Little bit over 6 months. $7,000, more than 30. What was it? There are multiple numbers and I don't remember. Yeah, I think I launched like 300,000 containers, but that is kind of old because I had to retest some things recently because I failed at certain things. And yeah, it was intense, and that's why I share this, because it makes no sense for me to just keep this with the customer that I'm working on, or I know a lot of companies are running these tests internally. They're spending money for nothing. They're killing the planet for nothing. There you go. Here they are.
And it's dramatic just how fast the Lambdas are by comparison. Like...
Did you find the funny graph, Eric? There's a really funny graph, the last graph.
Oh, I didn't see that one yet. Oh my God, you're right. This is at least 45 minutes.
No.
It's a 45-second scrolling exercise.
You're gonna know when you hit it. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's the graph. That's Lambda with increased limits, by the way.
Oh. So in 40 seconds,
it's scaling to, so it's Lambda with the burst limit increased to 15,000. Yeah, 15,000. It's up there. So it's going from 0 containers to 15,000 containers in literally 1 second. It is more, it was extremely complicated for me to create that many requests that go at the same time and create that many Lambdas.
Wow. That's cool. That'd be interesting. Do you talk about your testing methodology from a technical perspective, how you did it?
Yep, it's all out there.
Cool. Well, thanks, Vlad. This was super interesting.
To be fully transparent, like this Lambda limit needs a genuine workload. Like you cannot just go to AWS with from an account that has a $0 spend and tell them, hey, I want 100,000 lambdas in 1 second. It needs to be legit, but they can.
So you're able to leverage one of your customers' environments to run your tests.
Oh no, these were all ran into my own account. I talk about that. But yeah, read it. If you've got questions, I'm in the Slack, I'm on Twitter, I'm everywhere.
Thanks. I'm going to read over some more over the coming week here, I hope, and we can maybe ask some more questions about it. There's so much material here that that I think it would be an injustice if we didn't talk about.
At 12 Eastern, I'm doing containers from the couch on this topic. We're gonna go through it.
Oh, cool. Well, you can share. Do you want to share that link in the Office Hours channel for those that want to?
Yes, it's a Twitch link, so it's gonna take me a while to find it.
Okay. We are. They were all. So we had a lot of announcements today. Those were great. We also had a lot of questions today, and we are not going to get through all of them, or I don't think we can have a chance to get through many of them today. Let's see here if there's some quicker ones. Well, since we got Matt Calhoun on the line, who has been helping with EKS AMIs and rolling out your own ones and doing some of those things manually or with Packer. Why don't we get to that one quickly? Eric Berg, are you on the line? Yeah, there you are. Matt, you want to take this one?
Sure.
Pros and cons of using the latest EKS AMI versus managing and rolling out new AMI releases manually. Okay, it's slightly different than I was thinking about. So this is basically like, should you pin to latest or should you pin to some version of it? And okay, so my opinion on this is, since I also know, Eric, you're running Spacelift, I think you should be pinning to a version of it and then using automation like Renovate Bot to update that. And or what you can do is use a data source to pull in the latest version of that, but then you'll get drift detection in Spacelift when the new version is available, and you can deliberately roll it out at when you want to do it.
Yeah, but your question is more like, is it a best practice to do that, or should you, is it a best practice to use the latest EKS, or should you like always just let it pull the latest, or should you like manually decide I'm going to use version 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, like at that point. I think that I've been burned too many times, like pinning to the edge version. But I gave the same advice to some of my one of our customers earlier this week, is that maybe if you look at one of your non-production environments and you let your non-production environment automatically update itself to the latest version, and you sort of burn that in a little bit, and then more on a coordinated basis, you do your production environments to get them up to speed. Because while I agree with pinning to like a particular version, you also don't want to get too many versions behind, particularly because most of the things that they're updating in those versions are security vulnerability patches. They're not functionality, like new functionality that they're doing there. So I might say have your lower environments auto deploy using Spacelift, like some like whenever a new AMI comes out, then you can burn that in for a while, then every week or every 2 weeks or something like that, you go through and actually approve it in production to make sure that production gets up and running on the latest versions, something along those lines.
Yeah, that's actually just what we're doing. We had it, excuse me, originally pinned with a variable, and then I set up a data source to grab the latest, but there was a lot of, we didn't have time to check, so we just set it to do that in dev. Okay. But yeah, it's sort of getting a sense of whether you guys basically trust the AMI releases, I guess, is really kind of what it boils down to, because I've run into the management issues. What's that?
You can also consider just auto updating on patches, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you can build your own AMIs on a regular basis and push them. which is what one of our customers is doing.
If you want to scale, it's a really good idea to cache images on the AMIs. But what I wanted to say, and I pasted the changelog for the EKS AMI in the Zoom chat, is that that's gonna be mean, but a lot of updates are Linux and Kubernetes CVEs, and you definitely should update for those.
Yeah, for sure.
There is an issue on the containers roadmap that's asking for a more consistent release process around these AMIs, like, I don't know, maybe emails, maybe an SNS topic folks can subscribe to. But for now, subscribing to this GitHub repository helps, at least to know when an AMI with a critical security update is getting released. Because we had a bunch of issues in Linux, in Containerd, in Kubernetes, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, this is a lot to digest.
Yeah, for sure. The one thing that Vlad did mention there that also will help particularly if you have a lot of different containers that you're running like workloads for, and you kind of roll your own, you can actually cache those images by like pulling them down, in your build process into the Docker cache, and then when you spin up that new AMI, it actually has some of your stuff already pre-cached for you. So that's an interesting way to tackle some things as well.
For caching the really, really big layers, like if you have a 5 gig layer that almost never changes, great idea to include that. Are all your images using a base image that's 10 gigs? Great idea to cache that.
Yeah.
Those are all good tips. Yeah. Let's see if we have, we only have 2 minutes left here. So I think I'm going to pause on answering additional questions. We'll leave these on the agenda for next week and get to them. Hopefully they aren't too timely. This one is also really interesting. Matt has solved this problem here, and we have a solution for that I'd like to get to next week. And talking about Helm file strategies.
Can we just say for number 5, so for someone that doesn't want to wait a week, TLDR, go look at our Terraform AWS utils provider, and it has a resource that does that for you.
Yeah, just go look at examples, resources, expiring IAM access key. This is kind of what you want.
Yep, exactly.
So there's no way to do it in native Terraform. We spent probably 2 weeks trying to come up with the different ways of hacking it and getting it to work. Nothing did work. So this allows you to do it. And we basically wrote our own little resource in our provider that mirrors the AWS provider, but extends and adds some new functionality. All right. Well, with that said, I look forward to talking with everybody next week, same place, same time. If you want to catch up on this or any of our past sessions of Office Hours, go to youtube.com/cloudposse. We'll be posting a video recording of this session there later on today. If you haven't already subscribed to our newsletter, go to newsletter.cloudposse.com. Again, newsletter.cloudposse.com. We have dusted that off, and we are sharing all the interesting announcements that you get here. So if you don't necessarily attend Office Hours, you have another source. Our podcast is a syndication of Office Hours. Go to podcast.cloudposse.com. That way you can listen to it in the car, however you listen to podcasts. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Go to linkedin.com/in/Osterman. Mention you heard about us on sweetops, so I know you're not a recruiter, and I appreciate it. So have a great rest of your week. Love the conversation, and big thanks to Vlad for joining us and talking about scaling containers on AWS in 2022. Adios.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.